Yeah?
Go.
Great. Hello, everybody. My name is Clay McLeod Chapman. It is 2026, and I am going to start off this new season of Fearmongers with a specific reading from a specific writer that we all know and love, Stephen Graham Jones. It comes from an essay that he wrote for the anthology collection Why I Love Horror, edited by Becky Spratford. And I'm going to read just a little section because I feel like it does me a little good at the beginning of this year. Why does Stephen Graham Jones write horror? Because in the darkness, even a speck of light is bright. Another way to say this is that I don't write horror for the darkness. I write it for the good moments, for the heart, for the hope, for the chance of winning, no matter how distant and unlikely, no matter what the cost. But you can't have those good moments without a long, torturous grind through the badness. Doesn't that good taste better after having had to suffer through the bad? Isn't this why the salad precedes the meal? But I'd rather see a single small daisy out in a bleak, frozen landscape than a whole field of wild flowers thriving. To me, that one daisy, it's a fighter. It's a striver. It's had to struggle so hard to be where it is. I believe in that one daisy way out there more than I believe in that carpet of splashy colors sighing back and forth in the breeze by the easy water source, with the sun always shining down, and signs telling hikers not to trample all of the prettiness, please. No, give me that one brave flower out there that doesn't even know how to bow its head, that doesn't know what surrender is. Even if it doesn't make it through the winter, it tried, didn't it? To me, that's what horror is about. The trying, the fighting, the hope. And that was Stephen Graham Jones. Guys, today it's January 26th, and we are off and running. I didn't know if we were going to be back, but there's a lot of horror in the world, and it seemed only appropriate to keep on going. I am very, very, very fortunate today to be joined by two amazing authors who have two wonderful books that are either out or coming out, and I am going to do my damnedest to convince you that you need to read them both. Author of such books as Full Immersion and Full First Date that we just, Lordy, just found out about. Gemma Amor, we have you here to talk about Itch because as soon as I read it, it got under my skin. Thank you for coming, Gemma. How are you?
I'm as well as can be expected given the general state of everything going on around me. I rediscovered, as many people have over the last couple of days, that there's a clip from a Werner Herzog documentary about a penguin who's
Hmm.
decided to give up on its colony, and there's a particularly moving scene which is going viral of this penguin fucking off into the wilderness, just marching across an icy sort of tundra, headed for these mountains and leaving its entire colony behind. The documentary makers and everybody filming, nobody understands why, and they try and retrieve the penguin and bring it back to its colony, and it's like nope. And it's literally heading off into certain death because the way that it's walking isn't near any water, near anything at all. But I think it's become a little bit of a symbol for everyone just going, ah, which is just every day at the moment in this existence. Every time you open the death device of your phone, it's like the penguin just is there in my mind. So I'm feeling very penguin-like to answer your question.
I think we're all that penguin right about now. Author of Cherish Farah, which did that really come out 4 years ago? Is that true? That's not
I
true.
don't I don't believe it. I keep being told that, and it's very embarrassing for someone to tell you something like that and for you to go, no. And then they go, yes, sweetheart, it did. I had no idea.
Oh my God, what is time? What is time? And author of the upcoming novel, The Body. It is none other than Bethany C. Morrow. Bethany, how are you doing?
I am currently sitting directly in front of my husband and son in Paris, where my son lives. So you have caught me at the best I have been in 2026, in the year that has been the month of January of
Yeah.
2026.
Oh Lord. So are they just kind of staring at you right now, or are they kind of like in their own worlds, or are they just kind of
They
like,
both have they both have headphones in. Usually I will. This is I'm telling this in a cone of secrecy here that no one else is supposed to know. They will often be in the backgrounds of meetings and interviews and stuff like that, and no one is ever the wiser, and they are usually listening. It's only because they can't hear what you guys are saying this time that they're doing their own thing.
well, I feel like I love this kind of surrounded by family and friends right now.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
um, I I just don't know. I mean, like I'm coming to both of you with almost this feeling of kind of like prostrate, like just like I, I wanted to talk about your books, because I love them, and it that's essentially all I have. Like I'm clinging to books, and oddly enough, clinging to horror as a way, as a means of kind of just getting through the
Yeah.
day. And I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I feel as if, given the fact that both of your books are kind of dealing very kind of like directly with kind of trauma and kind of the scars of the past and family, and there's a lot of kind of connective tissue, I think, between both itch and the body, um, that I feel like it's a good kind of first step into 2026, because horror, I need it now more than ever. And I'm wondering if I can kind of pose the question to both of you, uh, because it's the age old question. It's the silly question that I feel like we all get posed. But it's like, why horror now? And I feel like that question, you could almost, put a little watermark on it. It's like, why horror in 2020? Why horror in 2024? And like, here we are, January 2026, and I don't know if I'm the first person to ask you this year, today, but I'm curious, like, if I was gonna be crass and just ask, like, what do you find is the value of horror in this moment? Not even this day and age. I'm talking
Hmm.
about like
Hmm.
right now. Like,
Yeah.
why horror? Bethany?
I think it seems so obvious. And I think for those of us who do it, it is quite obvious. But obviously part of being an author is communicating something to the reader, communicating something for the reader a lot of times. And I think if I look back at everything that I've written, my first book, Mem, came out in 2018, and it was a speculative literary novella about the ability to extract unwanted memories, but in doing so, it creates this mem. And this mem is created who doesn't operate like another mem, and she can come up with her own memories, and she can create her own identity, and she knows who she is. She's not simply a memory plucked out of somebody's head. And I remember one of the first things that the publisher who accepted it said was how haunting it was. And I did not know that. When when I sent it out, I did not know that people would think it was haunting. And then my YA novel, Song Below Water, came out in 2020, and then so many people said that it was haunting. And again, I didn't know that, or at least I didn't know. For me, I have always had elements of what should be and should have been identified as terror and terrorization, because I've always been talking from primarily a Black American female perspective. There's always been horror in my books.
Mhm.
It's life to me, and it's the world that we all live in, but that only some of us have had to know about. And so now I'm writing it overtly. Now I'm writing overt and therefore like horror as acknowledged by everyone, because I'm writing about churchianity horror, and the ways, the horror of taking something that is supposed to be about faith and making it about control and making it about abuse and making it about oppression. And for me, the reason that you do this and you don't do speculative literary or contemporary fantasy or historical as I've done in the past is because I'm talking to the same audience, but it's for a different purpose. And this purpose now is to embolden. And this purpose now is to say, somewhat like I said in A Song Below Water and the chorus rises, you're not crazy. This is actually what's happening. Because one of the things that has been done that is so horrific in our society has been this gaslighting and lying and denying and not saying what you're really doing. We're seeing it right now with just abject lying, just provable lies, discernible lies. And it doesn't matter. We're still going to keep pushing these lies. And the damage that that does to people to have, and I know this is a Black American, the damage that it does to people to have your reality and have the abuse that's being directed toward you denied to your face, despite video footage, despite witnessing it yourself, despite saying it's happening to me, I'm telling you this is happening. There is not just an attack on your body, and it's not just an attack on your community. There's an attack on your mind and on your mental health, and this dysphoria that you get when the reality of your lived experience is not lining up with what is being reported. And horror, I think, is an amazing way to tell people you're not crazy. This is actually happening. This is actually horrific. And the scariest thing is other human beings.
Yeah.
And I feel like it also, as in the quote that you read, is about hope, because this fire is contained. You can sit with the hard emotions that you're actually feeling in real life and the things that are actually hurting you mentally and emotionally and spiritually. And you know that you're in the hands of a particular person who hopefully you can trust. And they are not using these things to hurt you. They're trying to use these things to demonstrate to you resilience and demonstrate to you that there is a getting out of this and there is an end to this. And this fire is contained. Mm-hmm. So you can process it, you can process things, and you know that there's going to be an end to it. And I think that's the most hopeful thing about horror novels is they end. No matter what happens, it's going to stop.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity with something that you said, and I've heard this, said multiple times, but like, I mean, do you feel as if a certain cross-section of readers are suddenly kind of either waking up or catching up? Like, is is there this feeling of like, this horror has been here all along. It's just that it's new. It may be new to you, but it's not something new. Like, do you find that that's, I don't know, like, I'm curious, like, how do you, do you kind of roll your eyes to it? Do you just say like, welcome to the club? Like, what's the response?
Response could be different situation to situation, and probably should be, because the thing about community is we can trust each other, we have solidarity, we know that we're on each other's side. Every quote unquote new person who decides in 2026 that now they understand that something's bad, I don't know that I can trust you. I don't know that you're about solidarity. I don't know that you want to create community. And so there is an aspect of that's not necessarily my target audience. Mm-hmm. My let's talk about the body. My target audience for the body is probably somebody who was raised in an evangelical Church of God in Christ, or oh gosh, what's the other one I'm thinking of? I'll remember it and come back to it. But it's somebody who was exposed to this and someone who was harmed by this or hurt by this, and that harm wasn't acknowledged or wasn't there was no accountability for that harm. My target audience for the body, the only other person I might be talking to is the person enacting the harm, to say, are you sure? Are you sure this is what you want to do? Because it does work. It wouldn't be horrific if it didn't work, but it doesn't always work the way you want it to. You can break someone in a way you didn't mean to break them. Everybody doesn't break free. Some people just break, or some people break back. And you can be hurt too. The ability to hurt is not some superpower that only the strongest, most intelligent, abusers have. The rest of us have just been choosing not to engage you. And if you tell me that this is the only way, Are you sure? Are you sure this is what you want to do to people? You're sure you want to press them until they break?
Yeah. Gemma, I read Itch probably about a week ago, and it still hasn't kind of like gotten out from under my skin, which I feel like is says a lot about the book itself, but also the kind of time in which people are reading it. This
Mm.
book has been out in the UK since fall of last year.
Yeah, since October, it came out sort of midway through October, and then over in the States last week or the week before. It's been out for a
Yeah.
few weeks now. Yeah.
So you're bringing your horror stateside uh in in the midst
Sorry.
of, it's an intense kind of
It
time.
wouldn't be the first time. Apologies. I just always feel like I need to apologize for everything as an English person on this kind of
No apologies.
territory.
No, 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 no apologies here. But I am curious to kind of go back to that first question of why horror now? I
Mm,
mean, you're you're bringing your horror to the
mm,
people, to readers as we speak. So,
mm.
um,
I've been thinking about this a lot because to sort of sorry to speak over you, but
no,
the
no.
ADHD hits when there's a question like that that I feel very strongly about. It's coming out or it's never coming out. So I'm sorry, but I've been thinking about this question a lot lately because for me, I've always written horror, and horror's I've been doing this since sort of well seriously since 2018, but it's interesting to me that I don't actually think that question applies to horror. I think it question applies to art at the moment. And I feel very much at the moment that if you are an artist and if you are creating anything in any form, whether you're writing songs or sewing or making jewelry or clothing, or you're writing novels or plays or screenplays, you are taking part in a unique and quite beautiful act of rebellion. And whether or not we all like it, we're all kind of part of an artistic revolution at the moment. I genuinely believe that with novels in particular, kind of line by line, word by word, paragraph by paragraph, we are making a stand against a lot of evils and ills in this world. And I mean, I obviously can't apply broad brushstrokes to everything everybody is making because I'm sure there are harmful things being created too, but it feels very much like the act of creation at the moment, particularly with other influences like AI. It feels like an incredibly human and yes, rebellious thing for us to do. So I think of it less as why horror, why now, and more like why books, why now, why is it still as important as it's ever been to create literature and art? And yeah, that would be probably something that I've been thinking of the most is how we continue being part of the revolution.
Do you feel like I won't lean on horror, but is there if this is just a one of the tools within the tool belt of creating art,
Mm,
is horror at all more tuned to the moment that we're in, or
I
is
think
it,
so.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a coincidence that horror is probably having its best moment in the cinema for many years. Um, um, Sinners has just been nominated for 17 Oscars, which is amazing, and
Mhm.
it's brilliant because you can't argue about that movie. It is a genre movie, it's a horror movie, it's a vampire movie. I love that because other people would be like it's elevated horror or it's this and that. It's like nah man, it's a horror movie, and I love the fact that it's the most nominated movie like ever, I think, and it's a straight up horror vampire fest. So I think that actually is very symbolic of what's happening at the moment where people are embracing um horrors that they can interact with on their own terms. And I've said this before in sort of events is when you're reading a novel, you can put it down. When you're watching a movie, you can, well, unless you're in the cinema, but you can still leave. You can choose how you participate with your particular brand of horror. And some of us weirdos like me actually find it quite soothing, which I'm not sure what that says about me, but my podcast queue list of true crime documentaries. I'm not sure it's actually very healthy, the inside of my brain, but I find something about engaging with horror on my terms much more soothing than I do opening the BBC News app, spending 2 seconds reading the world news, and then just wanting to throw my phone into the sun because I can't. Actually, I find that more difficult than a slasher or it's all
Get
about
all the
choice.
answers,
Mm.
right? In horror, you get all the answers at the end.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. Well,
everything.
sometimes, yeah,
Well, in terms of why this happened, who did it, that sort of thing,
yeah,
whether they're satisfying or not,
yeah.
we won't get into whether they're satisfying or
Right,
not,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. But
but
you
you
can
get
make
the
sense of it. You can make sense
exactly
of it. And I think in the climate we're in at the moment, there are a lot of things that I am watching that I can't quite make sense of. And that is
exactly
hard for me as a kind of 43-year-old almost woman, having grown up with, I guess peaceable times in the UK and now not experiencing that. And it's I'm having a little bit of an existential crisis, and I'm in the UK, so I can't even imagine what the rest of the world is sort of going through at the moment. But yeah, I think it's engaging with literature or a genre on your own terms, and I think that's why it's becoming more and more popular.
Yeah. And isn't it always funny? I mean, just to kind of piggyback on what you said, it's like the second a large enough audience kind of leans into it and embraces it, something like Sinners or Weapons, uh, or even like Stephen Graham Jones with the Buffalo Hunter. It's like the second it like becomes popular is the second they kind of take it away from horror. They're like, well, that's not really horror.
Yeah,
That's
that's
like a
not
where
horror. It's
that's where appropriation
literary. Yeah,
happens.
yeah,
That's just the nature of appropriation. It's like as soon as
yeah,
I see the value in it, I want to take it from you and I want to strip it of
yeah.
it's a very obvious message and it's very obvious target audience. Because what I can't say is I really appreciate and value something in this
Mm.
space that I demean. So now I've got to
Hmm.
just say it's not. Now it's not in that space.
yeah,
And it's what's interesting is that it's happened for a very long time, particularly with female authors. And the most obvious
Mm-hmm.
example I can think of that is Daphne du Maurier, who
Hmm.
literally specialized in writing short stories that fall very firmly into the horror category. The original Don't Look Now is literally features a pair of like evil psychic twins, and it's it's there's the I guess it's the erasure of like the original purpose of a text and the original genre within which it was made and sat comfortably in order to make it more palatable and acceptable to other people. I never really understood that. It feels like a huge dilution of the original purpose and intent of a story. And I
yeah,
get very cross when I see publishers hiding behind dark fiction or speculative fiction or like, nah, if you're a horror writer and you're writing horror, just own it. Like you're lucky for you that it's popular at the moment. But I think some of that came with stigma and it not being very marketable and trendy and whatever. So, but then I've never really been a big fan of doing what was marketable and trendy.
yeah,
And I don't think that as a writer, are best served by chasing trends and marketability anyway.
yeah.
So, yeah.
I would be terribly remiss. We were halfway through this show, and I haven't asked yet for you to explain to the uninitiated, for those who are listening. Let's start with Bethany. Bethany, if you were to kind of give us the kind of the synopsis of the body, you mentioned earlier this phrase that I'm like obsessed with now, and in talking about the body, I would love for you to kind of also kind of explain, and I hope I say it right, churchianity, churchianity. Um, tell us what the body is about.
Okay, this is before my book tour, so you're getting the first draft. I'm sorry.
We're your warm up. We will test us out. We're good for it.
So because I did help write the copy, so I'm like, would it be unfair for me to read because I wrote the copy for the book.
It's
Um,
your words. I'm down.
it's okay. I'm gonna start there, and then let's see if I move on from there. Okay, so it reads as Mavis broke from her parents' congregation years ago, but she still hasn't recovered. Their impossible expectations and soul shredding critiques have dug deep into her mind, and she's taunted by the knowledge that even when she's done nothing wrong, she'll never be right. Now Mavis is afraid she's about to lose the only thing she has, her husband, Gerard. The man she's always known was too good to be true. No one thinks she deserves him, not even after surviving the serial cheater they wanted her to stick by. And soon they'll all find out they were right. Mavis is already unraveling when a brush with death shows her what real fear looks like. Soon she's under constant attack from all directions. As the assaults turn increasingly vicious and bizarre, Mavis realizes that hell isn't reserved for the afterlife, and sinner or not, no one is coming to save her.
Hmm.
And as I said, it's two of my readers were pastors' kids, and people from the Southern Baptist denomination, or like I said, the Church of God in Christ, or Word of Faith um, denominations. And I always say very clearly, this I'm a believer. This is not a takedown of Christianity. It's not allowing. It's how far right the world can go when you don't stop someone from using your faith as a political designation. And what happens when you create the absolute perfect environment, which is any organization to which people flock, ready to be subservient or ready to entertain the idea that that is required. And the amount of harm and violence done by those spaces. And I hope what people who've ever been a part of a faith-led church will find is a complete lack of faith in this book, and a complete lack even of religion, and it just being a cult, a hierarchical place where someone is in charge and you are going to fall in line, and if you don't, you are going to suffer. And so I know this woman very, very well. I went to private school with this woman. I went to youth group with this woman. I knew so many Mavises, none of whom I will say I saw break in this way. But unfortunately, that's more of a horror story, I think, when they don't.
Yeah.
Because you truly believe all of this stuff. You truly believe that there is just no way for a woman to be good and right, and you can try as hard as you want, but the entire function of this community is to blame you for not just your faults, not just your sins, but any man who comes into your into your orbit, you are suddenly responsible for theirs as well. And so I wanted to write about a woman that I have seen a lot and known very intimately, and the fact that what makes this horrific, and I know I've said this before, what makes this horrific is that it does work. It does work to beat people down like this. It does work to indoctrinate people into a lack of identity and a lack of self. So bereft of any sort of center, that they allow and seek the validation of these people who are just completely set out to abuse and harm them. Um, and I wanted to give them something to be afraid of. I wanted to say, if you can do it, we could do it. Again, I watch as many 43-year-old women, I think. I listen to a lot of and watch a lot of true crime. And one of my favorite is Snapped. And it's all about when a woman snaps and how she hurts someone. And I always say, I did grad school in Great Britain actually, and I was studying to do forensic psychology. And I think that I probably would have gotten myself into some really dangerous situations because my instinct every single time I'm around somebody who is a dyed in the wool abuser is to say, you're not special. You're not special. Nothing you're doing is special. Nothing you're doing is interesting. Nothing you're doing is creative. You're doing something we could all do. And you're not supposed to do that, is the thing. Like,
Yeah.
particularly in clinical settings, you're not actually supposed to do that. But that's my instinct all the time, is to say, just like you can hurt people, you can be hurt.
Wives with Knives is a good one as well. That's
I love Fatal Vows is also
oh my
another favorite.
God. We need to
I
have a date. Like we need to have a TV watching date and just like mainline
so
all of
good.
these
Oh
because you're
man.
talking my language now.
All right. We'll set a date. Um, Bethany, I have to ask though, like I mean, do you feel, I know this is early days, the book is coming out in a couple weeks, but is there kind of an inherent profane, like are you taking a risk here? Like just by putting this book on the shelf, like is there something that you're drawing a line in the sand? And do you ever kind of like wonder like who's going to cross it, who won't cross it, who's going to kind of like reject the book kind of at kind of surface value under the kind of assumption of like, well, this is, this is sacrilege or this is,
Of
yeah,
course, because that's how this whole thing works, right? Like I'm telling you, the majority of people that I've been in supposedly faith community with for the majority of my life will never read the book.
you know,
So I don't know about finding out how much I'm going to hell because they will never read the book, and that's kind of what insulates them from having to deal with anything that you say and like anything that you're critiquing. Um, what is the comedian's name? Is it Drewski? Drewski? I'm so sorry. I've never heard his name said. He just did a skit about megachurches. And the sad part, so he's all like wired up and he's flying above a megachurch congregation, and there's all these pyrotechnics. Here's the problem. He's literally just recreating something that we have all seen. And everyone is talking about you don't mess with God. And I'm like, since when is your megachurch God? I'm critiquing you. I'm critiquing your behavior. I'm critiquing your abuse. It's very funny to turn that into, oh, this is you're criticizing God. You can't do that. That's sacrilegious. Only if you think you're God.
yeah,
So I am more than aware that I will be absolutely despised that, I think, on a different level than anything that I've written, because it is people who have a vested interest, of course, in attacking anything that threatens the wholesale worship of the person at their pulpit, behind their pulpit. So I do understand that.
yeah. But then it's the finding the reader on the other side of that line as well, like the person
Yes,
who like gravitates towards it and
absolutely,
discovers it. Like that's the problem
absolutely.
too.
That's the target audience.
Yeah. Gemma, you have created with Itch the most visceral summoning of rage I think I've read in quite a while.
I thought I
And
was quite moderate in this one. This was quite toned down for
is this
me.
you holding back?
Yeah, well, so actually just to again to interrupt you because I'm a menace on these things, but it's very relevant to what you're saying. And I'm going to be very cheeky because I've got both of my books here. I've got a book coming out in February, and I'm just waving them at the screen for the purpose of the podcast. Itch came out last year technically, so the next one is First Date. Itch was my first big five
Yeah.
book, traditional publishing deal. And I did have to tone down the rage and the body horror
Yeah.
and a lot of it, a reasonable amount. First Date, I didn't. And so it'd be interesting to see whether people actually like First Date more or less than Itch, because I think with Itch, it definitely didn't go as hard as I could have done.
But First Date
I'm
does?
pleased. I'm pleased with the book. First Date does. Yeah, I'd
Okay.
say
Well,
it's
then
not a
maybe
particularly happy book.
First Date will be our second date for a lot of folks. But
Maybe
who came?
if you've got time, but it's just curious because a lot of people are finding Itch unsettling and all the things you love hearing as a horror writer.
Yeah. Well, tell us about it.
Full
Explain
of
it to us.
rage.
Like
Well,
like what's, for the uninitiated, how would you kind of describe Itch to us?
the short the I was going to say the short back and sides of it, but that might be too British. The long and short of it is Itch is a well, it's being pitched as a femme gore folk horror novel. My tweak to that is it's a femme-gore formication folk horror novel, by which I mean it is the story of Josie, who has as most of my protagonists do. And actually, one day I would really like to write a protagonist that just has nothing wrong with her life at all, and see what happens when she's thrown into a shitty situation. Because I think it'd be very different. And I mean that sincerely. I think people from traumatized backgrounds deal with traumatizing situations in the moment very differently to people that have never been exposed to fear or trauma before. That's a different conversation. Josie is returning to her rural hometown, which is a very small village called Elwood in the middle of a part of the UK called the Forest of Dean, which is not far from where I live in Bristol. It's a very mossy, damp, very beautiful part of the country with the Wye Valley and a big river running through it and lots of history. But it's also the back and beyond. There's not a lot happening there. And Josie's kind of returning to live with her dad with her tail between her legs after the end of, well, a particularly brutal end of an abusive relationship. So she's already kind of at rock bottom. She thinks maybe going home will give her a chance to reset and restore and restart her life. And instead, she trips on a dead body in the woods. And that doesn't happen. And I won't go into too much more about the plot itself, but the central premise of this novel is that in discovering the body, which is infested with an ant colony, Josie herself becomes infested. I'll leave it up to the reader as to whether or not those infestations of the mind or supernatural in nature or psychological. But whilst all of that is happening, the village in which she sort of has returned and is living is taking part in its annual ceremony. And the ceremony is something called the Devil's March. And it's based on the idea of a straw effigy paraded on a kind of, I think it's an 8-mile march around the village up to a point called the Devil's Pulpit, which is a real place in the Forest of Dean, whereupon the straw effigy is like hoisted off the cliff and sacrificed as a gift to the devil. So it's about rural superstition. A lot of it is my take on historic misogyny and how that's become very firmly rooted in quite a lot of our folkloric traditions. We have this wonderful folkloric heritage which is gaining new momentum at the moment. A lot of people are returning to folkloric practices in the UK for a variety of reasons. I think that's wonderful and very encouraging, but what people don't perhaps realize is that some of those old traditions are rooted in kind of the controlling and subjugation of women and minorities. So there's a lot about trauma and abuse and family dynamics and riddled with daddy issues like me. And that's about the best pitch I can give without spoiling too much of it.
I will totally follow your lead on this. But you did bring up the ants, and I have to ask because I do believe that one of the most affecting aspects to the novel, whether you had to dial it down or not, is this kind of presence of this colony and how it affects Josie. And like I lead us how you want, but I want to at least try to ask the question of like, writers are always kind of looking for that kind of perfect metaphor that kind of embodies either a theme that we're trying to get across or like, the idea, like I want to like succinctly kind of encapsulate this one feeling or this one tone or this one vibe. And I'm going to do that with a massive colony of ants. And I do feel like it's genuinely unsettling and profound. And the question is so simple, like, how did you come up with it? Where did that come from?
Okay. So I'm going to be a complete fraud, Clay, and I'm going to really break your heart, and I'm terribly sorry about this. But it's worth mentioning because I'm very transparent about these things. Itch is actually a commissioned novel. And I say that because that's becoming more of a thing in publishing. And I'm pretty sure somebody will immediately jump upon that and tell me that it's copying out and it's not the right way to write a book and blah, blah, blah. But the way that it actually goes down, or did go down with this novel, is my editor approached me while I was at StokerCon in San Diego. I had this DM pop into my Instagram, which just never happens. And it was particularly fortuitous. I was in the kind of doldrums of publishing where everything was going wrong. So this was like a lovely ray of light. And Hodder had been looking to acquire a novel that fitted into the kind of folkloric horror category because, we're, like I say, in the UK in particular, we're having this kind of folky revival, and they wanted a book that would answer some of those needs. She says, having immediately told everybody before that to not write to trend because it's not great, but just ignore my hypocrisy. I need to pay bills. And so I said, God, yes, please. I wrote them a sample, and there were a number of things and themes and concepts that my editor Kate wanted me to tackle in the book. What I then did was I took those themes and concepts and then I completely changed it all and did something totally different. But she really loved it. And so I wrote it in my own very unique way. And ants was one of the things that she really wanted me to play with. I'm cool with that for a number of reasons. In my mind, kind of rather sort of fortuitously, before I even got, the conversation about this book started, I've always loved the idea of playing with imagery around the devil. I knew I wanted to write a book about the devil. And because I think religiosity in the UK has very, very different connotations to religiosity in the States. And the devil is something that's actually quite a big part of our culture, but we don't really seem to know, like, not in a religious way. It's weird. It's become almost totemic in a different way. And everything in England is called the devil's something. The devil's boobs, the devil's arse, the devil's tail, the devil's rock, there's a devil's something in every town, every parish in the UK. And I suppose that does go back to our very medieval Christian roots. Point being is I really wanted to play with some symbology around the devil, and Beelzebub sprung to mind, and Beelzebub is also known as the Lord of Flies and often appeared in kind of demonic form as a collection of insects or locusts or flies. So I kind of ran with that idea in relation to Josie's infestation. It also served another purpose for me. Some readers have picked up on it, and I haven't been very overt about it, but there are elements of OCD in this novel that I don't label as such. But for those who have been unlucky enough to sort of been in the OCD trenches, have definitely picked up on some of the symptoms. And formication in particular is also something that can come and accompany a range of mental health issues. So this idea of not being comfortable in one's own skin felt like an ideal territory for ants to kind of wander over and under. And then the final part of this wonderful kind of serendipitous puzzle is my extremely neurospicy 12-year-old who is a font of knowledge on everything to do with ants that you could ever possibly think of. And his favorite thing to do, and you can ask any one of my friends that's been on a walk with us in the countryside, is to info dump at great length all of his like incredible knowledge about everything to do with ants and how they live and how they interact socially and how they build things and how they get rid of their dead bodies. And so it all kind of came together in this brilliant like number of fortuitous things that led to sort of Itch as it is today. But I definitely do sometimes read back over it and think, oh, I could have just gone harder in that bit, and that would have scratched my own itch. But I'm happy with the way it came out.
It goes hard. I don't like. I'm asking myself like, how much harder would one want to go before
There were all sorts of fluids taken out of this book, Clay. It was
the spigot? It got
it was a
squeezed.
good mop job, yeah.
Well, now that we kind of have kind of talked about what both books are about, I want to kind of like circle back on both Mavis and Josie because I do feel like there's a certain kind of kinship here of kind of struggling against toxic parents, this idea of kind of the kind of oppressive weight of the kind of previous generation, the patriarchy, and the kind of like resistance to it to like kind of push against it and survive. Who are you on the other side of that? Um, I I guess I want to kind of ask a kind of writerly question about I mean, I feel as if the two of you have kind of created these characters that are not the perfect victim. They are not the, they have their traumas, they have their scars, they are haunted by the past, and yet there is a fight within them that kind of pushes them forward. And in these times that we find ourselves in, I wish I had that fight because there are days where I don't know if I have it. And I guess I'm curious, like, what is it like to write for a character who if it were me, I would give up. I would lay down. I would stop fighting. Where does that, where does that fight come from? How do you bottle it, sell it?
It's interesting because for me, Mavis, Mavis has got to be the least like me character I've ever written. I I like to say a mix between Farah from Cherish Farah and Naima from the A Song Below Water duology is the closest to and you know use that information as you will if you've read Cherish Farah. But the Mavis's fight derives from the same wounds that the abuse is pressing down on, which to me is tragic in and of itself. Mavis's fight starts with not wanting to be found out or seen to or perceived or not wanting everybody to know everything all over again, which is something that she has lived through. And so it's unfortunately, and I did this intentionally, but the unfortunate thing about the body is that part of what I am saying is abuse begets abuse. And sometimes when you traumatize someone, they break in a way you did not expect. I'm not at all saying she's not broken. I think anyone who has read it will agree that she is irreparably she's irreparably broken, just not in the way that makes her pliable and subservient and obedient anymore. But so her strength is her fight is diseased to me and is very much a product of the torment and the torture that she's experienced, and it's part of the warning in my mind that
Mm-hmm.
this is a way this could go. So if I were trying to bottle, I would choose a different one of my protagonists if I was looking to bottle the resilience, or if I was looking to give. Wouldn't go to church for either. Okay, I would stay
Yeah.
away from my horror completely, and would go back. I would try my husband and son's favorite, So Many Beginnings, which is historical. It is my contracted book. It is a remix of Little Women, and it's like, yes, if you want to see pure, unadulterated bravery and courage and resilience, you're gonna have to go to So Many Beginnings. It's not gonna be in the body. It's not gonna be in Cherish Farah.
But like, does that person even exist anymore? The kind of the purity of like the fight, like we're all just kind of maybe we're all just broken people at this point. But I just I
I don't
find
think
it
that
more
there's anything
compelling.
wrong with. I don't think there's anything wrong with being broken. I think when Gemma was speaking earlier, it was speaking very much to two people that I admire so much, Nina Simone and Toni Morrison, who in their own way at different times said this is the time that artists get to work. Um, Nina Simone famously saying, if you're not doing anything right now, if you're not taking a stand or a side right now, I don't know why you're an artist. I don't know what you're
Yeah.
doing right now. And so for me, it's good that I didn't proceed to forensic psychology, because I think that I would have maybe been a lot more like uh, drawn from a more similar place to Mavis. But I think for me, it is what it does come down to is this kind of resistance is useful in small batches, in small doses, maybe to light a beacon or turn a page in history or something. But at the end of the day, we have to come back to love where there's nothing to fight for. there's no reason to keep going if we're not doing it from a place not of reacting, not from a place of hating something that is happening, but from a place of having a vision. And now I'm just starting to sound like Octavia Butler. So I'm just kind of always remembering the Black women who've already said these things. But for me, what I find happening, the more exhausted I become, is remembering that anger is not good fuel. It burns fast. You have to have a different fuel. You have to have a different battery, and it has to be because you want something different, not just for yourself but for other people. And it has to be because you actually believe somebody is your country person, and it has to be because you actually, America's done a really wonderful job of turning us all into consumers so that nobody's a citizen, which means we don't have to take care of each other, we don't have to worry about anybody but ourselves, and we can be very, very consumer capitalist directed individuals. And that does not a sustainable society make. You have to love somebody. You have to care what happens to other people. You have to care what happens to your neighbor. If that is not where your fight for liberation is coming from, you're not, you're going to burn as brightly as the hate that you're responding to, and then you're both going to be embers together, I guess. And that's not what I'm interested in. So yeah. I think that I'm much more, the people that I know in real life, I admire so much more than my protagonist. There is somebody, just to give a shout out, Hannah Oliver Depp, who is the owner in DC of Loyalty Bookstore. I feel like they are always involved with the community. They are always doing something, funding mutual aid. They're always, and I know how difficult it is to have a bookstore in Washington, D.C. right now. So the idea that there's just this font of energy that resurges when you've gotten vandalized a couple of weeks ago, your own shop, when you've had contracts canceled because you're on a list. And I keep seeing them stand up and do it again. And it's because there's somebody that they love. There's a community that they love. That's where the lightning in the bottle, it wanes and then it replenishes. It's the Hanukkah story. It wanes but it never goes out. And it's because there's something behind it that is a desire for good for somebody other than ourselves. Those are not the people I write, but those are the people that I admire.
I love reading those characters. And I want to talk about Josie, Gemma, because I feel like you put her through hell and back, both kind of internally, outwardly, you know, the kind of trials and travails that she goes through. There are those moments where I'm reading the book and I'm asking myself, it's page 50. This is where I would give up. It's page 134. This is probably, if I made it this far, this is where I would give up. This is where I would.
You think that, but humans are an awful lot more resilient than we realize. And again, to interrupt, because I need to really stop. I'm so sorry. God, it's really bad at the moment. I'm still unmedicated. Okay, I'll get there one day. We all don't think that we can cope with things in the darkest of moments, and actually, surprisingly, yes, we do. It is very much a case, as with many of the characters in most of my books, poor things, it's just a case of one foot in front of the other. And for Josie and Josie's situation, the main reason that she does pull through and does start to kind of change and go through a bit of a survival arc, I guess, is because she builds a community around herself. And it's the community that give her strength. It's Angie who, is that safe, soft, warm landing place for her. It's Jacob with his folklore and his kind of wiliness and his understanding of what she's going through. And believing her when other people don't. And even the detective, who sort of is a bit of a hard sell at the beginning, by the end they have this, and the dog, not forget the dog, they have this wonderful sense of strength in each other, even when everything looks bleak and sad. And that doesn't always happen in my novels. I think I tend to write single settings and small casts, so that community feel is often lost. But in this one, I got to have fun with different characters, and I got to actually understand that you can go through hell and back, but if you've got people around you, the chances of you being able to come out the other side of some of this stuff. And I also, because I am a bit of a nerd for survival stories, I devour stories of people going through the absolute extremes of what you think a human can cope with, coming out the other side and flourishing. Like the girl who literally fell from a plane into the jungle in, I think it was Brazil or somewhere in maybe Central or South America. She was the only person to survive that plane crash. She was about a 13, 14-year-old girl, and she walked through the jungle for Werner Herzog, again, it's him. He did a documentary about it. He was due to be on that plane and he didn't for whatever
Hmm.
reason. It's crazy. But I forget what it's called and I forget her name because my memory's trash. But she survived that wander through the jungle and she was discovered by fishermen in the end. And she went on to become like a believer, a scientist, a public speaker, a professor, and flourished. And
Hmm.
I think it's how you, from my perspective, when I'm writing a traumatized character, I think there is always a point at which, when you've put them through the mill, you have to have them confront what their sense of purpose is and how that affects the adversity and how that affects how well they cope with the adversity. And if your greater purpose is revenge or to survive for the hell of it, or to pursue love when you didn't think that was possible, or to create, or to educate, or to make sure other people never get into the same position, or to expose a lie, or any of the reasons that people carry on and put one foot in front of the other, then that kind of trauma arc becomes a lot more, I hesitate to use the word satisfying, but a lot more understandable to the reader, I think. Um, and as I said, I did actually put her through quite a lot worse. Poor, poor lass. So,
Guys, I cannot thank you enough for spending the hour with us, with me. It's ultimately very selfish because I needed your books, and now because of the effect these books had on me, I want to do my damnedest to try to get other people to read these books. Um, Itch is already out in the States. It's been out in the UK, but it just got here. But if you read Itch and you say to yourself, you know what, this is really, really good, but I want to go harder. I want to see Gemma go harder. Then you have to pick up First Date, I hear, which is out February 10th. And is that out in the States as well on February
it's
10th?
out everywhere, thank God, in February the 10th. There's no shenanigans
Everywhere.
there at all.
All
And
right.
if you're a fan, if you've ever read Mo Hader, that's my tribute to the works of Mo Hader. And if you don't know who she is, immediately go and find Birdman and read that. And if you think that I went hard with Itch, then read Birdman by Mo Hader. Um,
There you go. There you go. Also on February 10th, it's a big day for books. You have The Body, which comes out from Tor Nightfire. And Bethany, you're going on tour, so I will see you actually in New York at Powerhouse. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Wonderful.
With Aaron C. Adams. Who's who?
Aaron, who wrote Jackal, and
Oh,
I have to remember my copy to get it signed by her. Talk
this
about
is your
full.
reminder.
Yes, I'm saying it so that I will remember to do it. Absolutely amazing Black Appalachian folk horror.
God, it is.
Love. If you haven't read The Jackal, please pick that up.
Jackal is sincerely one of my favorite books. Like that book still resonates years after reading it.
Love
So,
it.
um, I genuinely appreciate you spending your time, your vacation, your overseas sojourns with me right here in snowy Brooklyn. Thank you so, so much. This has been honestly probably the first foot forward for me in 2026. Like the first foot forward in the right direction, the artistic direction. And
good.
I just want to say thank you. Guys, this has been Fearmongers. Really appreciate you tuning in and listening. For those of you out there who are out there, we're still here. somewhere. Thank you very much, guys. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.